Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I'm Scott. It's another vlog week. I've completed 5 books this week. Let's get into it. The first book I finished was Anne of Avonlea by Lucy Maud Montgomery. This is book 2 of the Anne of Green Gables series. Anne is out of school. She's 16. She was going to go to college, but a family situation meant that she had to stay home. So she is now teaching at the school that she was just at. So she's 16 and she's teaching people that she used to be in class with, some of them. This covers the ages of 16 to 18 in her life as a school teacher, her adventures, I guess I would say, in Avonlea, which is the name of the town that she lives in, and her interactions with people, some of them who we met in the first book, some of them whom are new for this book, such as her next door neighbor, Mr. Harrison, who's a cantankerous old man. I believe I mentioned him last week, who she quickly wins over. Also in here, we have her continued relationship with Gilbert Blythe, who she is, and I don't really believe this is a spoiler anyway, but who she is destined to be with some point in this series. But she's not with them in here yet. There's no actual real romance between the two of them, although there's obviously some hope for it on Gilbert's side. Anne has a picture of what her perfect partner is, and she pretty much sticks to that and is unwilling to deviate from it. And we'll get more into Gilbert and Anne in the next book, which I also completed this week. Also, as I mentioned last week, Anne in her, for the sake of simplicity, I will say mother, her adopted mother, sort of, Marilla, they take in Davy and Dora, who are the twin children of a third cousin, I believe, of Marilla's, who has died. I mentioned before, I believe, Davy is a very irritating character. I do not like him at all. Dora is almost a perfect child in that she never gets in trouble. She always does what she's told. She always does what's right. So, of course, she is seen as boring to both Anne and Marilla, and they both state, or they both express, that they love Davy more, even though Davy gets in trouble and is, for lack of a better term, pretty much a little sociopath, which you might say all small boys could be. I'm not a parent to boys, so you know I'm glad of that. I was a little boy once. I'm sure. Okay, I know I wasn't perfect, and although when my sister came around, I became much better because I knew I couldn't compare to that. So I might as well try being the good one. But honestly, Davy took away a lot of my interest in the book because he was just so annoying. I enjoyed Anne as a teacher and, you know, basically her life as a teacher. That was all good. But Davy took me out of a bit. I think overall, I gave Anna Green Gables a 4.5 stars. I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. Uh, Not a bad book, but a bit of a letdown compared to Anne of Green Gables. So, although it was not the second book I finished, I'm going to go ahead and discuss Anne of the Island. I finished this book yesterday. It was the fourth book I finished this week, but since I've already talked about Anne of Avonlea, I will talk about Anne of the Island. Now, there are some good news. Anne gets to go to college. Now, this covers the ages of 18 to 22. She gets to go to college, so there's less Davy. There's still some Davy in there, but there's less. I gotta be honest, I think that was the big thing in there, the big good thing in here, was there was less Davy. Anne herself become a bit annoying, a bit judgmental, and Anne was proposed to 6 times by 5 different men. It just seemed a little much. And Anne's response to most of those proposals were perfectly fine. Some of them came out of nowhere, and that she said no was it made sense. Some of them were from people she didn't like, and yet who she still hung around with, but talked about behind their backs. It's fine. It's not much of a spoiler to say one or two of them were from Gilbert, but she definitely refused them the first time because he wasn't what her ideal was. Although she got extremely upset and jealous if, like any other girl, paid any attention to Gilbert. Honestly, the worst part of this book for me was Anne, who I liked in both previous novels. That can be fine. I mean, I can read about a character that's probably somebody I'd be like, I don't want to hang around with this person, but it's fine reading about them. But it went into eye roll territory for me, just way too much. If I read book 4, it's either going to be this week, which I will get into a little bit later, or a bit of a distance off because I probably definitely won't be reading it next month because I already have a full schedule as far as books go. So I will say, based on this book alone, I don't feel any great need to continue the series. My possible continuation of the series would be based on Anne of Green Gables and to some extent Anne of Avonlea. Anne of the Islands, the 3-star. Not a great book. Part of the thing that I liked about Anne before was one, her imagination, which I think kind of lost a bit here, and two, her overall kindness. And quite honestly, a lot of times in here, Anne was just mean, and I didn't like it. The second book I finished this week was the Knocked Up Plan by Lauren Blakely, which is book 3 of the 4-book series that I have called, I believe, One Love. I previously read The Sexy One and the Hot One, and now the Knocked Up Plan, which is about a woman, Nicole, who wants to get pregnant, and she asks her coworker, Ryder, to knock her up, basically to give a sperm donation. But what Ryder proposes is his sperm donation be more hands-on, or not hands, but you know what I'm saying, and that's how they go about it. Nicole has never really fallen in love with anybody for. Ryder got out of a marriage where his wife was a sex addict and cheated on him with 7 different men. So he's pretty down on love. Which these two people getting together is fine. The whole I want to have a baby by myself. I would like you to be the sperm donator, and okay, let's bang it out a lot. It's silly, um, because one, and this is something that's just apparently Lauren Blakely inappropriate things happening at work are apparently just the thing that happens here. They're coworkers. They are both relationship gurus, which is funny because neither one of them is really good at relationships. In fact, Ryder is pretty bad at it, and I think he continues to be bad at it throughout the book. The fact that he's supposed to come across as this guru basically is ridiculous to me. So I didn't particularly like the book. As with a lot of the romance books that I've read, the sex was boring. I'm really disappointed because, as I mentioned many times, Double Puck, written by Lauren Blakely, was a great book. Had much more sex than probably all four of these books together, but it was never boring, and it's just boring in these books to me. Nicole is a friend of Delaney, who was in the previous book. Delaney was with Tyler. They were college sweethearts. Tyler is a friend of Simon from the first book. All of these also pretty much inappropriate, either relationships or situations. Abby and Simon from, I believe it's the sexy one. I believe the sexy one is the first one. The hot one is the second one. The sexy one is a man and his nanny. Inappropriate. The second one is Tyler and Delaney, which perfectly fine that they're together. Nothing inappropriate that, except they have sexual relationships at his legal office and pretty close to it at her massage therapist uh, work. Now, Nicole and Ryder, I think it's inappropriate because they're coworkers. It's not as much because they don't really oversee each other, and I wouldn't really mention it except for the fact that the other three books have inappropriate stuff in it happens. Not so much Tyler and Delaney, it's just where they choose to bang one out that it's inappropriate. But the first and the fourth book, inappropriate relationships. So I'm going to give this one a 3. I didn't really like either of the main characters. I'll be honest, I didn't like Nicole in the hot one either. Yeah, it's a 3. And so the fourth book I read and finished was Come As You Are. And this is Flynn and Sabrina. Flynn is friends with Ryder from the previous one. He has taken relationship advice from Ryder. So he's single in this, obviously, because that's what happens when you take relationship advice from Ryder. Flynn is a millionaire. He's big into tech. He has done investment in the past. Every time he meets a woman, they usually want to be with him for money or to climb socially, basically. Sabrina is a reporter. She is recently out of work, been laid off. The two of them, oh, and Sabrina was essentially left at the altar, left a few days before she went to the altar by her fiance previously. I believe it was like 6 months previously, perhaps. But so the two of them meet at a masquerade party, and you can see where this is going. They quickly go into sex, which seems really silly for a millionaire who is concerned about uh, people using him for money, etc., that he would basically just have sex with a stranger he doesn't know. doesn't really make sense to me. But um, so they don't know who each other is after this. They arrange to meet. In the meanwhile, she gets hired to write an article about Flynn, not knowing that Flynn is the guy she was with. And they meet. She recognizes him. Oh, well, I mean, she sees him as Flynn, and they were supposed to meet, not knowing who the other one was. And he recognizes her by her smell, which, okay, and a few other reasons. But of course, it's inappropriate now because she's writing a article about him. I will say, for the most part, there was a lot of flirting in it, but for the most part, they kept it appropriate while she was working on the article. So out of the four novels here, that was the one that was probably the most appropriate. There is a situation with her mother who is horrible mother, but like with all the novels here, like this thing that is brought up that could be seen as a huge stumbling block is kind of like just put aside rather quickly. I kind of wish that maybe there was a little bit more in these before it's just like, no, it's okay. Um, and I find it funny that people using for him for money is one of the big things that he worries about. But he pays for her brother's college, but it's okay because he pays for the tuition for everybody in her brother's class. I mean, you're still doing it for this, but I got to say, this was probably the most inoffensive of the four books. I'll give it a 3.5. I actually liked Flynn and Sabrina well enough as characters. Of the four groups, or the four couples to the books, they're the ones who I would probably see as possibly lasting. But it was a fine book to pass the time. Not a book I'm never going to pick up again, but there it is. The fifth book, which I finished like 45 minutes ago, is Volume 6 of the collected short stories of Guy de Maupassant. There were a few stories in here that are pretty much essentially retreads of the stories in the previous collection. You're not often going to get a happy ending with de Maupassant. Somebody is going to talk about something that either happened previous in their life or something that they were told or something that they witnessed long ago. It's not going to be a happy ending. That happened several times in this book. This book actually has the most stories in it of all the ones I've been so far. It's got 15 stories, three of which are essentially novella length. Costly ride, useless beauty, people being used, basically. The father about a man who basically talks a woman into giving it up and gets her pregnant and leaves her, and then he's like, years later he sees her and, oh, she has a kid, and now he wants to see the kid, but she's gotten married to somebody else, and he gets to see the kid and he freaks the kid out and then he leaves. Okay. The Baroness, about a woman who basically uh, is lower to middle class, and uses men for money in a way. It's fine, but again, it's a little repetitious, and I kind of get to where I want to see something new from him, which I will. So, mother and son, kind of on the repetition thing, but I liked it. It's about a mother who had a man they loved, but because he didn't have any money, basically she ended up marrying somebody else after her husband dies. she reconnects with this guy, but he's married, but they do become lovers, and she has a child. And one day, he, I believe he's 17 at the time, catches them, and he goes away. And then her lover goes to find him, doesn't find him, and she says, "Don't come back until you find him." And she never sees either one of them again, although she does communicate with the lover. And then she's on her deathbed and she tells his story to a magistrate and dies. But it was a good story. I liked it. The hand is what I want to see from him, like more from now on, because it was essentially a horror story, sort of. A man has a hand on his wall, a chained hand, and he basically says, "Oh, that was like a guy who tried to kill me or something." And then one day he is murdered and the hand is gone. Now you're like, well, did the hand do something, or did the person that the hand belonged to come and kill him? You don't really get the answer, but it was an interesting story. It was a change of pace, which I really liked. A Tress of Hair, which is kind of another horror story about a man who essentially falls in love with a tress of hair from, we are led to believe, from a corpse. There is some possible between the lines implications that he may have done more to other body parts of a dead woman, but it's never said. But I mean, he is put in an asylum, and there's also an indication that the person who this tale is being told to, because that's how he operates, um, might be attracted to the tress of hair too, but we're not 100% for sure. So I like that. The river on the river, sorry, on the river. Not a horror story, but maybe a story of suspense. Nothing really happens in it until the end. Maybe a horror story. It it's all about the environment that he sets. It's you could definitely look at this as a horror story. And I'm really like, we have like three in a row that are just really, he doesn't really change like his storytelling methods. I mean, it's still usually unhappy or an ambiguous ending, but just, the whole tone and setting is just perfect. Then we go back to kind of more what we're used to with the cripple, a guy uh, who was young and a go-getter and ready for life, and then something happens to him in war, and he doesn't marry the woman he was going to. She marries somebody else instead, but he comes and like gives toys to their children, so he's almost like a mascot. And uh, honestly, I would have liked the story if I didn't get this type of ending from Damien Poisson all the time. A Stroll, again, depressing, very sad ending, but I liked it. It moved rapidly to the climax, and you could almost go like, but that's how did they get there? But you can also see it. I don't want to spoil too much. I know I've spoiled some of these stories a little bit. Then two more stories of the Alexandra, whatever. It's kind of a nothing story. Didn't really have much of an impact on me. But the log is another story where a man succumbs a little bit to a relationship he doesn't, but he's saved by the log. I won't tell you how he is saved by the log. And of course, it's a unhappy ending in a way, although not as unhappy as others. But I preferred this story over most of his stories. Julie Romaine is about an aged actress who this one was just sad, just sad. And a lot of his stories are sad, but I don't know, but for some reason, this one stuck out to me a little bit of sad. And then the Rondoli sisters, which I'll be honest, I was going, oh crap, I'm gonna get a happy ending, and I was like, oh, he's positioning us for a happy ending, but I was wrong. I don't really want to spoil it, but a man spends a long time with this girl, Francesca Rondoli, and she basically says, I'm going to go see family. If I don't come back, come find me." She doesn't come back, but he's also there with his friend, and his friend is upset because he wanted to get with the girl. So the friend kind of like, you know, or you're probably going to crawl to her, and he ends up not seeing her, and he goes back the next year because this is in Italy, where he is visiting Genoa, and he goes back next girl, and he actually goes to the place that she said for him to go, and she's not there. She is leading a happy life elsewhere with somebody else, but her sister's there, and he spends a fortnight with her, and they have fun, and she cries, and then he leaves, but he's happy that she has two younger sisters who will eventually come of age. So it's like, oh, okay, you had me going this one direction. It's like, oh, I couldn't get this happy ending with your sister, but I'll have a happy ending with you. Oh no, I'm just gonna go through each sister. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah. But he made me think that I might have a happy ending, so I gotta give him credit for that. I'm gonna give this one overall a 4 star, which I think is an improvement over the last couple of volumes. I really like the horror stories. A couple of the ones that may seem like chestnuts, as far as Guy Maupassant stories go, were still pretty good. And I think maybe there was only like one that was a bad story. Some of them were kind of like, eh, but overall, as a volume, very good. Like with the Anna Green Gable novels, I don't know when I'm going to read another book by him. September's pretty full because I've done the TBR for the Tolkien readathon. I have 13 books that I have to read next month, plus a book, Hearts in Suspension, by Stephen King and others that I want to read because of a video that I have planned in the future. So I have at least 14 books I want to read. Some of them are a little bit longer, so I might get to this next month. I might get to the next Anne of Green Gables book next month, but who knows? This brings me to a position where I'm not used to. I am currently only reading one book, Agatha Christie's Giant's Bread, written as Mary Westmacott. It's See, the problem with this book is one, I have to read it for my 5-year battle Agatha Christie, but it's also like 436 pages. It's not an easy read so far. So what I am doing is I cannot find a audiobook on Audible or that I can listen to for free, but it is available on YouTube, so I will be listening to that and reading this. I'm just a little annoyed that these are the other Mary Westmacott books. This 436 pages. None of these are over 300 pages. The next book I have to read, Agatha Christie, is the longest one. That is I'm going to finish the Agatha Christie book this week. If I finish it quickly enough, I might try to read a Guy de Maupassant or Anne of Green Gables book, but possibly not because I want to start with the September books on the 1st of September and I don't want to be reading anything else. So if I do finish Agatha Christie book and don't read anything else, that means I will have finished with 20 books for the month of August, which will be my second highest month this year after June's 23. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment.